Welcome to Open Source Sustainability. I'm Alex Lassiter, CEO of Green Places. On this show, I talk with sustainability leaders to learn how companies are adapting their business models to be in line with sustainability goals. We believe sustainability has to be open source to be successful, and these leaders have offered us a glimpse inside their strategies in the hopes that we can all move forward together. We're fascinated by some of the unique challenges these sustainability leaders face and are excited to dive deeper. In this episode, I'm talking with Beth Whitehouse, Senior Director of Strategic Planning at Oglebay, a 2,000-acre resort and public park located in Wheeling, West Virginia, known for its golf courses, gardens, and recreational activities. But it's not all leisure at Oglebay. With a robust forestry management plan and their Solar for Sustainable Energy and waste reduction programs, they're working hard to take care of both the Oglebay campus and community. I'm excited to dive deeper into these initiatives today. All right. Well, Beth, thank you so much for joining the podcast today. Very, very excited to have you. I guess just to start off with, give us a little bit of background about yourself as Senior Director of Strategic Planning. How does the sustainability and climate change, the environment fit into your everyday role at Oglebay?
It's certainly, it's interesting. So certainly now it does. I have been with Oglebay about 33 years. And so I actually did my internship in college here. And I worked in the hotel, and I have been really in hotel operations the majority of my career. It was only about a year ago that I talked to our president and CEO about maybe some next steps. And he actually developed this position of strategic planning in the hopes that we could find a way to move some initiatives forward. And so for him, he's from Seattle, right? And so his West Coast side was very passionate about sustainability. And this was very important to him and knew that it was very important to Oglebay. So now it is infused in so much of what we do. And in my day-to-day life, we actually just recreated many, many years ago. We had a green team, I think probably before green teams were cool. And I was a part of that many, many years ago. And then it kind of went away, right? So you have that one passionate person in your organization that drives it. And if that person leaves, then you sometimes are left with a hole. And that was the case with us. And so I have reignited the environmental stewardship team. That's what we call it now. It's very fancy. And it's something that we try now to infuse in everything that we do, because we have 4 pillars of sustainability, which really impact every aspect of our business.
And maybe for the listeners that aren't as familiar with Oglebay, maybe take a step back and paint a picture of what is Oglebay, the property, the guest experience, so we can, I think, start to get an understanding of it's a pretty complex organization. And when you think sustainability, it's a lot more nuanced than I think folks probably think. So maybe tell us a little bit about what it is, and then we can start to understand more about what does sustainability look like in hospitality and more about what you're facing.
Absolutely. We are an over 2,000-acre resort located in Wheeling, West Virginia. We have 3 golf courses. We have a zoo on our property. We have 7 retail shops. We have 8 food and beverage outlets. We have 10 tennis courts that also include pickleball. We have an Olympic-size outdoor pool that also has the children's splash pad. We have 250 hotel rooms as well as 53 cottages. And those cottages are anywhere from 2, 4, 6, and 8 bedrooms. So truly what we are is a family resort. We have something for all ages. We have a beautiful spa, so it's not unusual for dad to go golfing, mom to go to the spa, and the kids to go out and play in the park. And whether that's at the lake with the pedal boating, whether that's at the mini golf course, whether that's at the par 3 golf course, or again at the pool. And so it's a great place. We're located just 1 hour from Pittsburgh, 2 hours from Columbus, Ohio. So we're kind of the perfect meet destination for families and family reunions. And again, the benefit is that we have something for everyone.
I mean, it sounds like it. As we were talking before the interview started, I've got three young sons,
yes.
and for us to get anywhere, to even just get a minor break, it's hard because we've got a 2-year-old who can't swim. We've got a 5-year-old who thinks he can swim. We have a 6-year-old who kind of can, but that's about the extent of it. But then you've got golf, you've got spa, you want to be able to relax. But when you start to look at this from a sustainability perspective, there's a lot there. You've got obviously the utilities and the hotels and heating and air and water, but you've also got these other facilities that make this a challenge. And as I understand it, sustainability was kind of always maybe a part of the founding story at Oglebay. So maybe tell us a little bit about how did this begin and what is the general philosophy? I know you mentioned pillars. So tell us about what sustainability and hospitality means at a place like Oglebay.
Sure. So for us, I agree with you. We essentially, it's always been a part of who we are. Colonel Earl Oglebay, and there really was a Colonel Earl Oglebay. This was actually his summer home. Back in the early 1900s. And he originally worked at Oglebay Norton, which had to do with steel and mining and all of that good stuff. And he actually was good friends with Jay Rockefeller. And so they were on the national scene back then in the 1900s. And so when he retired, he came back here. And at that point, it was called Waddington Farms. And so It was a farm. It was 75 acres at the time. It grew, and he grew it to 750 acres when he left the gift. And when we refer to the gift was that he left his summer estate home to the city of Wheeling for the purpose of recreation and education. So long as we use it for that purpose, that's what he intended the gift to be used for. And so it was given to the city, which is very unique in that we are a self-sustaining, and we are the only self-sustaining park of its kind in the entire country. Wow. Everything that we make goes back into the park. There's no profit in terms of a profit center to give to an owner or anything like that. Everything we make goes back into the park. And what Colonel Oglebay was doing back then was really interesting. He essentially was researching soil conservation and crop rotation. And he was very big in he was very concerned with the growth in population, that there wouldn't be enough food. And so how we grew food was really important to him. Equally, there was also a point at which they felt like there wouldn't be enough trees to harvest at some point. He planted 327,000 saplings, which are now our forest today.
Wow.
And so it has always been at the root of who we are. And so when we look at it as part of the legacy, right?
Yeah.
That our job is, we've been here for almost 100 years. Our job is to make sure we leave it better than we found it. And the only way to do that is to make sure that we're sustaining everything that we have in an environmentally friendly way. And so whether that's through our forestry management program, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit later, or making sure that our emissions are as low as they can be. We know we're in an industry that is notoriously high in emissions because it's considered a luxury industry. But there are things that we can do, and things that we have been doing for years we've just never talked about. And I think that's equally as important. We're starting to really realize that your generation is really taking note, which is so awesome that you're doing that. And you are making purchasing decisions based on these sustainability achievements that people are making. And we've finally noted that and said, wow, that's important that we begin telling our story. We're really great at doing things. We're not as great at telling our story, not only to our guests or future guests, but to our team. We weren't telling our team what we were doing, so they weren't yelling about it from the rooftops either.
What's cool about that is the beginning of being able to explain, the story and where you have been and where you're going is, to me, it's this opportunity to engage with people on a level that maybe you hadn't yet. And whenever I think about summer camps or family vacations or resorts, all that type of stuff, one of the most enjoyable things that I have is to learn about the space that you're in and get that connection back with how did it get started? What are they doing? Why did they make these decisions? And it feels like, particularly with that founding story, you've got such an opportunity to educate your guests and help them understand where this came from and where it started. So do you do things? Have you noticed any opportunities to both to educate, but also have you noticed responses back from guests who said, wow, I had no idea about all of this. Like, let me learn more about how this forest was started and, all these different programs that you have.
So we do. One of the most interesting things, not most, but one of the interesting things that we do is that we have a Segway tour that is a historical tour. So we give the historical tour while on a Segway, right? So it engages some youth as well as some older adults. But we take them by the mansion. We show them where Colonel Oglebay's wife used to serve cookies on the actual mansion patio, and tell the stories of the Oglebays and what their mission was when they came here, and making sure that we follow that same mission. Mrs. Oglebay was extraordinarily passionate about greenhouses, and at one point she wanted to have palm trees here in West Virginia. Not an easy thing. So Colonel Oglebay actually built her a greenhouse, and it's like the Phipps Conservatory greenhouse. It's of that era. So it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. And they were very passionate about agriculture and finding different ways to grow alfalfa and different things like that. So we tell that story within the walls of each of those buildings, kind of as you pass through. And then a big part of who we are has to do with our donors, right? And so we have what's called the Oglebay Foundation. So while we are self-sustaining, we could not do what we do without the Oglebay Foundation. We supply and can provide about 90% of our operating budget, but they supply the other 10%. And it's through generous donations, people that have come here, that have had unforgettable memories, and they've brought their families here for many generations, and they've become invested. And so they will make donations. They will include us in their will. They will take maybe a 401k and name us as the beneficiaries.
Wow.
And so it's over all of these years. I believe it was established in 1996. And it's over all of these years that we've been so blessed. You'll notice when coming to Oglebay that a lot of things are named. So in our case, we've got things like the Bissonette Gardens for Mr. Bissonette, who made a generous donation. Wilson Lodge, which is the hotel. The Bird Wing of Wilson Lodge. The West Spa, which is actually the West, or a family name. And we've had people that have come to us, as an example, that have said, we have $5.5 million that we would like to give Oglebay, and we'd like you to do this with it. And we've said, okay, sounds great. And so we have to weave that into the fiber of who and what we are, so that we don't ever forget who and what we are, that we are here. We run our hotel, our food and beverage, our golf, those revenue generating centers as a way to pay for the People's Park, for the city park that we provide to our community. And so that's what allows us to be able to do what we do.
So I'm from North Carolina, and I grew up going to, another industrialist large vacation home in the Biltmore Estate.
Yes.
in Asheville. And it sounds like there was a similar story in that this man was looking for a return to nature to some extent, and looking for a way to disconnect and re-engage with the natural surroundings, and obviously invested a ton of his own personal money and time and effort into making that available for people. But what's cool about this foundation is you're giving other people who may not be quite at that level to be able to make that donation as well, to be able to invest into the environment and, again, a return to nature so that families like mine can get away from the city and remember, what it's like to reconnect with, the natural surroundings. It's a really cool way to engage.
I think that was never so true as with COVID.
Mm-hmm.
What we saw with COVID, and we were very fortunate. We were in a state that stayed open, and we were surrounded by two states, Ohio and Pennsylvania, that were completely shut down. So, but what we saw were families coming to the park, taking their shoes off and putting their feet in the grass and feeling that infusion of peace. And just enjoying the walking trails. It was as simple as a walking trail. It was as simple as a hiking trail, but a way for them to spend time as a family unit in a safe way. And we were able to provide that, and we felt very fortunate to be able to provide that.
That's amazing. So this has really been at the root for who y'all have been for a long time, but you do have some really interesting programs going on. I know you've touched on some of these, but tell us a little bit more about the forestry management project that y'all have going on.
So that was so exciting. One of the things, as we look at our over 2,000 acres, we certainly had, and it was a little over 1,036 acres that were unmanned, for lack of a better word. They were left to grow. But in that, you have just a ton of invasive species, right? I mean, and that happens. That's very natural. It happens. But it begins to really affect the health of the forest. And so we were approached by EQT, which is a gas and oil company, and asked if we wanted to create a partnership. And that partnership is that we would give them those 1,000 acres. And by give them, we would allot those acres to them in terms of the projects. Certainly, we still own them. And in return, they would create an entire forestry management program at no cost to the Wheeling Park Commission that would outline the invasive species removal, the afforestation and reforestation of planting new trees that were native to the area when the area warranted it. And then they would also, and they've included now, and actually we're firing it up for the first time tomorrow, 2 biochar machines that will allow us to take that forest litter and then turn it into biochar, obviously sequestering for over 1,000 years, and then using that fertilizer in our gardens again. So creating that full circle loop, which is super cool. And we are then able, and they've given them to us. And so we will use it in all of our horticulture needs as well. So anything that we can biochar, we will be biocharing. And so we're super excited about that part of the project. The second part of the project are that they are also providing terralytic probes. And these terralytic probes, for those who don't know what that is, essentially 50, 75 years ago, farmers would have to go and take some soil and get a soil sample and run it off to wherever farmers run it off to. And now you're able to take these terralytic probes, stick it in the ground, and get instant information about the health of the soil. And so the cool part about that is not only can we see what our soil is doing, but we're partnering with Wheeling Country Day School, which is a local school in our area, an elementary school in our area, where the kids, they actually have 2 probes outside their classroom. It's on a dashboard. And so if you pour water next to the probe, you'll be able to see the soil health come up. If it's a great sunny day, they're able to see certain things happen. So what we have done is we have asked that all of our probes be put on their dashboard so they can see in their park what is happening in terms of when we remove invasive species, when we replant native trees, what happens to the soil with everything that is going on, to be able to tell the story.
I love that so much. Environmental remediation, I think, is something that obviously there's a strong desire for, but the actions don't always follow. And one of the reasons, I think, in some cases is you don't have the feedback loop. if you
Right.
do something, it's hard to tell that it worked. And something will creep into your head saying, did this actually do what I was hoping it to, or is this not a good use of my time? And so what I love about this, and it seems like this is a big part of your ethos, there's the education component, but then there's the measurement component. And biochar is a very cutting edge technology. And being able to be at the forefront of this and being able to provide your guests and all the different communities that you touch access to learn and engaging with the schools, this is really, really cool stuff.
It
It's
is
really
in Wheeling,
remarkable.
West Virginia. I mean,
Yeah.
the thought, and we are so excited to really be, and our goal is really to be an example, right? Colonel Oglebay, this farm was a model farm. It was an example farm. And so that's what we are. And that element, as you said, of education that we try and infuse into everything. Another really great project that we're working on right now is an aquaponics, hydroponics facility, essentially. So we got $1.5 million from an EDA grant to put in an aquaponics facility. We're teetering on aquaponics and hydroponics, vertical growing. But the great part is we want to introduce growing back into our community, just like Earl Oglebay did, right? And so we will infuse that educational piece on how that's done and that it goes back to our history. And so this will allow us to essentially begin to replace some of the produce that we currently purchase, right? We'll start to replace that with what we're growing here locally. We're also applying for a grant that could possibly, it's a $10 million grant that would allow us to create a food center where we would do all vertical growing here through and with cogen as an option there. And then everything is completely automated in terms of how it's fed, how it's watered, everything, so that it's the most efficient way to do it. But there again, making sure that we're not having those transport hours of getting food to our facility. One of the things that we'll feature with that are strawberries. And so why strawberries? You know, that seems kind of crazy. Well, first of all, most people like strawberries, and I believe it's it's children's number one fruit, right? So that's good.
It's my children's number one fruit. That's for sure.
But where do strawberries come from? Generally, they come from the West Coast. 90% of our strawberries are raised on the West Coast. They're actually picked prior to being ripe. They're painted the color red. They're spray painted so that in their travels, it will have time to ripen by the time it gets to us. So imagine all of the transportation hours from a West Coast strawberry to get to us on the East Coast, what that means. And so that's one of the other reasons why we've chosen strawberries. And my hope is that we'll have strawberry margaritas and strawberry ice cream and strawberry vinaigrette dressing. And there'll be a strawberry on everything, so that we can be known for these strawberries.
You should. And what's cool about that is this is just so much part of who y'all have always been, you know, with Colonel Oglebay creating something that was one of the first things I heard from you was self-sufficient.
Yeah.
Something that can return back to this place where we can survive on our own. We've got the resources that we need. We're not, you know, inherently dependent on different things. And we're really we're not just using what we have, we're enjoying what we have.
Yes.
It's taking pride in what you do and creating something that has obviously a high element of quality, but you also have this great feeling of where it comes from. I mean, this is really remarkable. And I know you're doing some solar panel work as well. You're working on moving away from fossil fuel-based energy. Talk to us a little bit about what you're doing on the renewable energy side of things.
Yeah, so renewable energy is a little bit new, and it's a little bit new in the state of West Virginia, to be very honest with you. You know, many years ago, it was felt like we were not in a great place within the United States to use renewable energy, and that has certainly changed. We equally were approached by a company called IMC Solar. And this company really is a solar development company. So what does that mean? And you know, we have to always be mindful of our nonprofit status, right? So we when we have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that every dollar is spent wisely, as do most companies. But we certainly feel that because we have an obligation to our guests and to our city. But so what they have done, which is amazing, is they've approached us. We have outlined about 16 solar projects, and that is everything from placing the panels on the roof, as you would normally see, to actual parking areas, covered parking areas with solar panels that also include EV charging stations. And so what they do is they actually go out and they find funders who pay for the entire project. If we were to do all 16 projects, it would be about $3.2 million.
Wow.
And so they have companies that would like to receive the renewable energy credits, right? And so in some cases, there's tax credits. Because we're tax exempt, we can't receive any of those credits. So this allows them to receive those credits and us to reap the benefits. They then come in, put everything in, and they are responsible. Let's use the parking, covered parking areas. They are responsible for that for 20 years. So if somebody hits a golf ball and it breaks the panel, they're responsible for replacing that and making sure. So essentially, we enter into a power purchase agreement where we purchase the solar at a lower rate, right? And so it's at a lower rate than we're currently paying for electricity. And we have an agreement that rate will increase at 2% each year, right? And so it will go like this, whereas our current electric is going to go like this. And so it will raise at a much lower rate than the current electric rates are raising. And again, that's a 20-year agreement with them that will allow us to enter into that renewable energy environment. And much like the forestry management, that's actually a 10-year agreement. And then they turn a clean forest over to us. If at that point we are in the either renewable energy or getting into the credit business, we can then either look to, one, monetize it, or two, use those credits. But right now, we're in the sustainability business. We want to make sure that we're telling the greatest sustainability story so that we can move our parks forward.
What I love about this is y'all have done such a great job about using the economics of sustainability and regulation to the advantage of creating and allowing your resort to really do some things that most businesses can't fathom doing. And it obviously, this speaks obviously very highly of you and your ability to navigate both the planet concerns, but also the realities of funding projects. And I'm just really excited just to hear how you've been able to navigate all of these things to get so much more. And it's obviously just at the beginning. I mean, this is truly, I think y'all definitely are a leader in this space. But what's so interesting about this is these are things that other people can do. They need the know-how. They need to understand how you do these things, but you've done such a great job about engaging with businesses and engaging with grants and engaging with developers and saying, this is what we want. Here's a way for you to be able to get what you need so that we can continue to push these programs forward. And that is very, very unique and really, really cool. This is awesome.
Thank you. And it's something that I think that we're very passionate about in terms of, from every size, even from a donor perspective, we added 26 water bottle filling stations throughout the park and the resort, and some have the little doggy bowl at the bottom, and some don't, but some do. And we have donors that have said, "I'd like to just buy one. We'll pay for one. Great, that's fantastic." And so we allow that to happen, and they can put a little placard on it that says, in memory of Sadie, which was their dog. They were just so excited to be able to honor Sadie in some way. It can be as simple as, if someone passes and you'd like to send something in their name by making a donation to America Future Trees, which allows us then to plant trees in the future. I mean, we were hit very hard with the ash-borne illness in the trees and had to do tons of removal. But so that reforestation is really important. And being able to use those donations in that way was a fantastic opportunity as well.
What a great way to encourage your guests, obviously, to understand and educate, but also guests and alumni and supporters to be able to help support you. Is there something that you wish that guests coming to Oglebay, you wish they knew about sustainability here? Something that maybe they don't know that you wish that they did?
That's a great question. Sustainability that they don't know that we wish that they did. I think that a huge part of our sustainability efforts also come within our zoo. And we do so much down there. Our Dr. Joe Greathouse is phenomenal and is an absolute steward of sustainability. Everything from taking all of the cardboard that we use and we convert that over in shredding it, convert it over into bedding for the animals. It's an easy way for us to be able to take care of the bedding, making sure that the seafood that we feed the animals is sustainable seafood, making sure we just added composting down at the zoo specifically. And so that is something that is extremely important. We're the only accredited zoo in the state of West Virginia. And that accreditation comes with very high standards. But Joe never fails to essentially incorporate sustainability into that entire operation from top to bottom. Whether it's you simply walk into the offices and they're the lights that come on, you know what I mean, only when being used. And it's as simple as that, to the complexity of essentially taking care of an endangered species. We just had two little babies born. They were red wolves, and they are an endangered species. And so we have two new baby cubs, and he works with an entire endangered species program to make sure that we're doing our part within that program. And it's super exciting.
That is amazing. That's amazing. I mean, it's very clear that this is not only something that has been a part of the story since the beginning, but it's something that you're obviously building on to the point that you're looking at vertical farming, you've got biochar removal, you've got all kinds of stuff. It is just such an amazing story, and I'm so glad to get the opportunity to talk with you about this. I've sure learned a ton here, and I know that many of the folks that are listening, particularly in the hospitality and resort space, and folks looking for places like this, I think would really benefit from learning, and I appreciate you sharing so much today. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. We appreciate the opportunity to tell our story.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you to Beth for joining us, and thank you for listening. If you like this show, please be sure to leave us a review and follow this podcast wherever you like to listen so you don't miss an episode. This podcast is powered by Green Places. If you're looking to reduce your company's environmental impact and reach your sustainability goals, visit greenplaces.com to learn more. I'm Alex Lassiter, and I'll talk with you next time on Open Source Sustainability.